You guys, April was crazy. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori. Today I'm going to be giving you my April wrap-up. Now I DNF'd one book in the month of April and finished 7, and I am super excited to talk about them because I feel like I had a really good month of reading overall. I had some surprises, I had some 5-star reads, which really made me happy, and I completed a readathon. My team was incredible for this readathon. They worked so hard, and we ended up finishing out, and I made this really cool little memento from the month for us, for the team, and I had everybody's name on it. And this is now going to be sitting behind me in all of my videos as a memento of the awesome people that were in the team and participated in the readathon. And they are wonderful, and I had a great time with them. Let's get into the books that I read. Now, a lot of the books that I read this month had to fulfill specific prompts within the readathon. It was all science fiction and fantasy, and the goal was to get rid of books that had been sitting on our TBRs. Because as we all know, the TBRs can get really crazy really fast. I think most of us ended up adding more books to the TBR than we took off, but hey, we'll take what we can get, right? So the first book that I read in the month of April was David Gemmell's Legend. This book has been sitting on my shelf for a while, and I have been recommended this book by so many people who love the fantasy genre. I couldn't put it off any longer, and it fit a prompt that was something I needed to read in the 20th century. It was published in 1984. I think there's just so much amazing content in the pre-2000s fantasy, and I'm really excited to see more of it. But if this was kind of my gateway into pre-2000s fantasy, whoa! This book is about a group of men and women who are soldiers who are standing in the gap between their country and this approaching horde of enemies. It kind of gave me Helm's Deep vibes, I'm not gonna lie, which I really, really loved. And what was so cool about this story was it really delved into the heart and soul of a soldier. And Druss, the legend, who's obviously legendary in the fantasy community as a character, is a has-been warrior who comes back into the fray for one final battle to be kind of the figurehead, to encourage the men and women who are fighting with him, to be the man who stands on the battlements to say, it doesn't matter that we're outnumbered, we can win this anyways, or we're gonna die trying. The conversations between the characters were really what made this book incredible for me. There was a point in the very beginning, in the first probably quarter of the book, where I almost DNF'd this book because there's a trope involving kind of an insta-love moment that's not my trope, you guys. I can't handle it. However, the fact that I gave this book 5 stars anyway should tell you all you need to know about the rest of the story. My friend Theo over at Rekindled Reader recently read this book pretty much at the same time I did, and let me tell you what, his review of this book was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna link that down in the description box below so you can go watch that because it honestly is incredible. After Legend, I picked up a review copy that has been sitting on my shelf for way too long, since last September or October, and that is Ascendant by Michael R. Miller. Now this is a coming-of-age dragon rider story, and I was kind of told, not by the author, but just by the general community, that this was kind of what people wanted from Eragon. It definitely takes a different twist on the Dragon Rider Chosen One theme, which typically neither of those things are particularly my cup of tea. That being said, I was really intrigued by this story, having read Eragon, and I do like a dragon now and then, and especially this cover really pulled me in. The idea of a blind dragon, the boy who saves him, and how they kind of break the mold of what the society accepts. This book utilizes a really interesting magic system where each of the dragons have a different elemental ability or magic within them, and the rider kind of taps into that and is able to draw on their magic into themselves. They have to learn how to handle the magic, how to deepen the bond between rider and dragon, and all of those sorts of things. So this one, I think if you are looking for a Chosen One with a little bit of a twist, if you're looking for really heartwarming main characters with a coming-of-age novel, and you're looking for that dragon fix also with a twist, because Ash, who's the dragon in this book, is such a refreshing take on dragons and a different feel to what dragons can be in fantasy. And I just think that Michael Miller really hit the mark with what he was trying to do with this book. After Ascendant, I picked up a sci-fi, which was something that I've been wanting to do a little bit more this year, and I did end up reading 2 sci-fi novels this month, which I was very happy with, and I enjoyed both of them. The first one was a 5-star read. Now, this is a book that is not unfamiliar to any of us in the community. If you've been here for 5 minutes, you've probably heard somebody talking about it in the sci-fi sphere, and that is The Martian by Andy Weir. This is the story of a man who is stranded on Mars and has to survive with the hope that someone is going to come and get him. And as you know, Earth and Mars are, a fair distance apart. It's not like you can pack up your family and drive over for the weekend. So it's so intense. Like, the tension in this book is palpable through the entire set of pages. I had such a hard time putting this down. It is the story of human resilience, what people are capable of when they are pushed to the very brink of what is survivable. And Mark Watney, who is our main character in this story, is just delightful. The humor that he maintains, even through the worst days, it's hilarious, it's inspiring, and it's heartbreaking all at once. And I absolutely loved the way this book was formatted. The different points of view that we were given throughout the story really added to the tension of everything that was going on and gave us, as the reader, a really broad view of the entire picture. I anticipated really loving this book, but I didn't think I anticipated loving it as much as I did. I think this book is definitely going to be on the list of possible contenders for Book of the Year, and this ending will rip your heart out. It will absolutely rip your heart out. It's so good. This whole book is just so good. I will definitely be rereading this. It kind of brought me back to when I was a kid and my grandfather used to sit and read me Robinson Crusoe. I've always loved survivor stories. I've always loved the idea of kind of the shipwrecked, lonesome person who has to survive and beat the odds and just hope and pray that that someone's going to send a boat or a spaceship or something for them. And I'm really excited to continue on and read more of Andy Weir's work. Next up, I took a break from my readathon reads because I just needed a little bit of a palate cleanser, and I usually don't pick the traditional books that you would think of when you think of a comfort read or a palate cleanser. So to cleanse my palate during all of the fantasy and sci-fi I was reading, I picked up Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. Now, this is the story of the Greek and Trojan War, told from the perspective of Briseis, who was a young princess, priestess, etc., who was captured by the Greek army and became a slave to Achilles. Now, this definitely takes a twist on the story, and it does not hold back from sharing the horrors that the women went through when they were captured by opposing armies back in that time. I had mixed feelings on this. I absolutely love what this book was trying to do, and the way that it was kind of stripping away some of the myths and the legends surrounding the heroes of the wars and showing a little bit about what went on behind the scenes in the camps of these soldiers when the great heroic mythical battles were not being fought. And I think that that's really important. I think we need to have stories like that that expose, you know what? Not everything about the myths and legends of these heroes is always glamorous, and we need to understand that. I struggled a little bit with some of the character choices that Pat Barker made in this book, and I think as I got toward the second half and ending of the book, I liked it less and less. I enjoyed the first half much more than the second half, and I think I kind of fell out of the story a little bit about 2/3 of the way in, and it was a little bit of a push for me to finish it. Overall, I would say that it was a good read. I gave it 3.5 stars, I think, on Goodreads. It was okay, but I definitely really struggled with some of the character choices and the language choices that the author made, because one of the things that always is jarring to me is when we have really modern language being used by ancient characters. And some of the character motives / choices felt like she kind of threw them in last minute, and it was just kind of jarring to me. So I didn't love this as much as I was hoping to, but overall I am glad to be able to say that I've read it. And then It finally happened, you guys. I read The Blade itself. I hope you guys are proud of me. I finally got to this book. I've been saying I was going to get to this book for way too long. My kitten is climbing all over my laundry baskets and now wants to go out. So I did a vlog for this book, and you can watch that. I'll put it up in the cards for you. So I'm not going to talk a ton about my experience with this book here because I definitely go into depth in the vlog, but non-spoilery. I had a good time with this book. I did definitely struggle with the lack of plot, which kind of surprised me because I am a very character-driven reader, but I think this book showed me that I do tend to like a little bit more plot than what was included here. I thought that most of the characterization was fantastic. The dark humor and the dialogue and the characterization, especially of Glokta and Logan. I actually really liked the portrayal of Jezal. Don't misunderstand me to mean that I liked Jezal, because he needs an attitude adjustment, okay? I really got a chance to see why Abercrombie is so beloved for his characterization and his dialogue and that dark humor, and he just takes all of the tropes that we see common in fantasy, especially predating this series, and just twists the heck out of it, and I appreciated that so much. I am a little ways into Before They Are Hanged, which is book 2 in the First Law trilogy right now. That will be in my May reads, and I'm really enjoying book 2 even more than I enjoyed book 1, so I'm really looking forward to continuing this series. I had a good time with book 1, and I can finally say that I've read it. The last book that I read for the readathon was Priest of Lies by Peter McLean. This is book 2 in the War for the Rose Throne series, and I had read the first one last year and was just kind of waiting. I liked it, but I didn't love it. So this book really hadn't been a priority for me, but I needed a book that was the second book in a series to finish up the readathon. So I just grabbed this one off the shelf and decided to read it. I enjoyed this. I think it was a really solid continuation of the first book. This is the story of Thomas Piety and his gang, the Pious Men. It's been compared to the TV show Peaky Blinders. It's very gritty, grimdark, like city gang boss vibes, fights between gangs, different territories within the same city, that kind of stuff. But there's of course a larger entity that is affecting this smaller city. Thomas Piety is a first-person narrator, and I actually think that one of the big strengths of this series is how well Peter McLean writes first-person narration. There were some things in this book that, like setting choices and progression things, that I think I was kind of hoping it was gonna go in a slightly different direction than it did, but it was still a good read and I still had a good time with it, and I will say that these books read incredibly quickly. So if you're looking for something just to taste test and try, I definitely do recommend Priest of Bones. I think that McLean does an incredible job showcasing mental illness, and especially veteran PTSD and things like that is represented in an incredibly powerful and respectful way in these books. He also deals with childhood trauma. Like, these books are not for the faint of heart. This is the kind of series that if you're not used to that really dark, gritty, graphic, like, it's definitely gonna challenge you a little bit either way, I think, but it's done in a way that I think is very, very well written. The last book that I read this month, and I'm gonna pop it up right here, is Those Once Forgotten by N.C. Scrimgeour, and this is also a second book in a series. It is part of her sci-fi trilogy. The first one was Those Left Behind, which I read last month. These read incredibly quickly. This is a first contact trilogy with a serious twist, and basically there is a small group of survivors from a dying Earth who are sent through this way station to try to find a place for everyone else to follow and live, a new planet, a new something for them to live on. And everything goes to pot, basically. And that's the first, like, opening of the first book. As we get into this book too, the characters definitely get more vibrant, and the way that NC works through the different alien races, and she changes the physicality and the way that they view life and the different culture things that change between the different races of aliens versus humans, etc., is just, I think, really well done. This is an incredibly character-focused sci-fi, which I appreciated. Book 2, kind of like Priest of Lies, definitely made some choices that I had a little bit of a harder time with. There was kind of a focus on certain character motives that felt a little questionable to me, and that kind of tripped me up, especially toward the middle of the book. I definitely intend to finish the trilogy because I do want to know how this ends, and I think that NC does a fantastic job of building this super vast sci-fi space world. The antagonistic force is really interesting, and I like what she's doing with it. So I'm definitely curious to see how she's going to end the series. The last book on this list that I'm going to talk about briefly is my one DNF for the month, and that was The 11th Cycle by Kian and Ardalan. This is a book that was heavily inspired by the Dark Souls video games, and it is very, very grimdark, and I knew that going into it. And I do, as you guys know, I read dark books all the time. I kind of got to a point where I could see where one of the storylines was heading, and I just didn't want to go there, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't something that I wanted to read. And I do think that there's some really interesting concepts introduced right away in the beginning of the book, and I know a lot of people have really enjoyed this. It just wasn't the right fit for me, especially right now. I may or may not go back to it. I don't know yet. That's pretty much it for April. We did have episode 5 of Imposter Syndrome, which is my monthly writing room show for authors to sit down and talk about a topic within writing fantasy. It has been such an amazing experience to host this show so far since last December. In episode 5, I got to talk about writing combat with Rob J. Hayes, JCM Byrne, and Thiago Abdallah, 3 SFF writers that I just really think have done amazing things within the genre. Their books are all fantastic, and we had a great conversation about writing combat. So I will put that up in the cards if you want to go watch that. I also did multiple live streams this month. I did an interview with Alex C. Pierce, the author of The Blood of Crows, which I loved last month. I had a great time with that book, and the interview with Alex was so fun, and we had a great discussion. You can watch that back on my channel. I also had a book friends chat with Andrew's Wizardly Rees, who's one of my closest booktube friends, and we just had a great time. It was so much fun. We were goofy, we talked about books, we got a little serious in a couple parts, so it was a great chat. We also did a book friends chat with 3 of the 5 Grimoire Discord owners, and those were Theo from Rekindled Reader, RJ from RJ Reads, and Alex from Tall Guy Reads, and we had a blast. That was such a fun episode. We had a great time. Definitely go check that out if you want some extra entertainment after you've been watching Imposter Syndrome and my book friends chat with Andrew. We had a great time. I am really looking forward to May and the few books that are on my TBR for May. I'm very excited about. I'm looking forward to doing some mood reads. I would love to know, what book was your favorite in the month of April? What did you read that you absolutely loved, if anything? And what are you most excited to read in the month of May? Let me know down in the comments below, and I appreciate you hanging out in my little corner of the internet. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon, the link is down in the description. I have an exclusive Discord, and I share a lot more information about my writing process and the fantasy novel that I'm working on that will hopefully be coming out at the end of 2023. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you are reading 5-star reads. I hope you're having a great week, and I will see you in the next video.